So for the next page in my journal, the next 2 pages, I'm going to take some distress stains. These are Scattered Straw, Vintage Photo, which is my favorite, and then a little bit of Gathered Twigs as well. And when you're doing distress stains, you can do them a bunch of different ways. I like to just spritz them with water. And then I'm going to take my journal. I don't want to mess up the rest of it, but what I'm going to do is just start to smush and pick up different colors here. I'm not really getting a lot of different colors, so I'm going to go back in and I'm going to put some more of my Gathered Twigs because I think that that Vintage Photo is really taking over. So I'm going to just touch this in different places, and that's going to give me a completely different look. So once I smush this in there and get it all covered, I'm going to take my heat gun and just start to heat it. I'm also going to take some of this ink off using my towel, and then I'm just going to wipe my surface and do the whole thing again. But this time I'm going to use a little bit less Vintage Photo and a little bit more Gathered Twigs. And I'm going to put the Scattered Straw in here because I don't want it to get too dark. So I'm going to spritz it with water again. And I'm going to go into it and kind of smush and then lift it and see what it looks like. Kind of give it a little swirly. Maybe put a little bit more water on here, perhaps a little water on here. You can also manipulate what happens by just moving the paper, and I love the way the distress inks behave when you do that. So you want to just get some of that ink onto your paper like that, and then you can actually touch it to the paper for a completely different look. And I can do the other side as well. I'm going to close the book because I want to get all those areas in the middle. And as you can see, it does bleed over into the other pages, which does not really bother me because I really do prefer to do browns when I'm doing anything. So I'm going to just let this drip off and just pick that last corner up. So once you have that all done, you can clean up your surface. And I'm just going to blot that off. And what I do sometimes to prevent this bleeding is I just take a couple of cardboard pieces and I put them on here. So I'll be doing that when I go to the next session. And you want to quickly clean up anything that bleeds over into the pages that you have that are already done. And then I'm going to dry this with my heat tool. And I'm going to touch these pages to the inks and see what I end up with. Okay, I'm going to mop this up before I put the book down. Okay, I just spritzed a little bit of water on here, and I'm going to give it a couple of seconds to react. And then I'm going to come in with my heat gun and I'm going to start drying them. I'm also going to just mop some of it up because I don't want it quite that wet. Next, I'm going to take the crocodile stencil and some Vintage Photo Distress ink. And I'm going to begin to just sponge through in different places. You can tape the stencil down if you'd like. I'm not really that worried about it. So I'm just going to kind of fade out here. So I want that corner. Maybe I will go up here a little bit so it's not quite such a hard edge. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here at the bottom. And once again, I'm just going to sponge right through the stencil. I'm going to come all the way to the edge of my page. Now this stencil, I guess I just tore it a little bit, but this stencil is a little bit more fragile than the others. I guess they had to do that to get that authentic look, but as you can see, it has these little tiny pieces. So I would love to go through here with some embossing paste, but I wouldn't use this stencil for that purpose. And again, I'm going to come up here and just, I guess, fade to the side a little bit so it's not quite so hard on the finish there. And then what I do to clean my stencil, very simply, is I throw my towel down I spritz on top of it. And for this stencil, because it's so fragile, I just rub through like this until you get that color off of it. Okay, I'm going to continue with the burlap stencil, and I'm going to use frayed burlap. But this one, what I want to do is I just kind of want to sponge through a little bit just to get some texture here and there. Nothing really specific, just drop a little bit of texture here and there. Now, once I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the spritz and flick technique just to get some water droplets onto my pages. So I'm going to give that a second just to start to soak through before I heat it with my heat tool. So for this, I'm going to be using the Dilutions stamps, and I'm going to use a couple of the sayings. But before I do that, I want to get a little bit more background on here. So one of my favorite stamps lately is from Random Quotes, and it's just a script background. And I'm going to take some archival ink, and I just want to rub it on here like this so that I get sort of a second generation stamp on there, because I don't want it to be too neat. I just want to kind of touch it to a couple of different places and just get the illusion of some long ago script. Okay, so I'm setting up my letters here so that I know exactly where I want the words. So I'm going to do love life, journal, dream, and believe. So these two I kind of want on top of each other, and these I want like this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them on my wood blocks. I want to use some ultra thick embossing powder for this because I really want them to kind of pop off the page. And I'm going to use Stampin' Up's chocolate chip ink because I prefer to emboss with clear so that in case I get any extra flecks, they're not going to look really bad. So now the problem when you are stamping onto your journal pages is they're not really flat because I have this underneath here, so I'm going to have a heck of a time getting this to adhere. So I'm just going to really ink this up well. And then what I'm going to do is just hang on to it, and I'm going to bring the page to the stamp and just try and press every part of that paper into the word. And there we go. And before it gets too dry, I'm going to put some of this embossing powder on it. I am going to just lift this up. The leftover embossing collects onto the paper, and then I'm going to heat set it. I'm going to go ahead and do the other words exactly the same way. I'm going to look underneath, and I'm going to put this here, which is going to protect this page. And I'm going to put life here. I'm going to do the same thing because that worked out pretty well. I think I moved it a little bit, which you don't want to do, but it's okay. I'm not looking for perfection in here. I'm going to do the same thing down here with dream. And I'm going to sprinkle my embossing powder on and emboss it with my heat tool. So I feel like I need to fill in. I love my little die cut camera, so I'm going to put that there. And then I'm going to look for some stamps that I think would go with this. So perhaps I can do just that one there. I don't really want to distract and have too many words, so I will do a little postage stamp perhaps up here or maybe here, and then we can put that in the middle. So I'm just going to look for some stamps that I think would look good on this page. So this one, I don't want to have it really dark, so I'm just going to swipe my pad across like this, and then I'm going to stamp it. And next I'm going to take this postage stamp, and I'm going to do the same thing because I really don't want to distract from what is already here. I just feel like I need to fill in a little bit. But for this one, I think I am actually going to stamp this full on because I want to go ahead and watercolor it a little bit. Because on this side here, it came much lighter and I kind of like that. So we're going to just, oops, let's see, how does this go? We're going to take this here and stamp it. And then we're going to go in and watercolor that. So now for this globe here, what I want to do is stamp that again, and I want to watercolor it, and then I'm going to pop it up a little bit. So I'm just going to ink that up. Again, a full stamp. This is a waterproof ink. It's black archival. And we're going to just stamp it onto a piece of scrap paper. Now, very often I get carried away and I just keep going until I don't even like the pages anymore. And I want to make sure that that doesn't happen here. So what I'm going to do is just come in with my inks and I'm going to do my edges just to darken them up a bit. And I like to do that with some walnut stain. And once I come in with the walnut stain, I may want to come back in with some black soot. But for now, I just want to darken those edges with some walnut stain. And I do have the protective cardboard on here so that I'm not getting it all over everything else. Now it's funny how sometimes when you go over things, they take on a completely different look and they'll bring up like dark colors. Like here you have that little pop of something that was really dark there. So it's very interesting and I really like when that happens. So now in the center, sometimes I like to go a little bit darker. I'm going to leave this the way it is. And I like the way that came out. I may want to go back in here with a little bit of vintage photo because I love that color and I just love the way it looks when you bring it onto your project. So I'm going to actually go right over the top of these things because I don't really like those spots white. I don't want to darken the page too much because I do want some of those bright spots, but I am going to come over those little dots with some vintage photo. I really have to watch myself because I will tend to turn the whole project one color and then I step back from it and I'm like, what the heck happened? So you have to be careful. So I'm going to come in just along those edges with the black soot, just because I really want to have a little bit of contrast here. And the black soot definitely tends to draw your eye to the center. Now I die cut my camera in black first and then in silver, and I just cut these pieces off, and then I did this here with a silver marker. So I'm going to take some pop dots or Stampin' Dimensionals and I'm going to put them behind my camera so that I can pop it up. Now when I'm doing this camera, I like to put 2 or 3 of these Stampin' Dimensionals behind the lens because I'll show you in a second. You can see it just pops up a little bit, so it's very cool. And I like to just have that sticking up a little bit farther than the rest of the camera. So I'm going to use a blending pen and I'm going to use some baked brown sugar, Stampin' Up! Ink, and some Bermuda Bay and Gumball Green. I'm just going to pick the ink up right off of the pad there, and I'm just going to casually put some brown on here. I definitely don't want to color really because I'm not that great at it to begin with, and I really want this to just look more random than anything else. I don't want it to look like I've tried too hard. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to use a framelit or a punch to punch out that globe. I'm going to be using a magnetic platform with a cutting plate. I'm going to put down my cardstock and I'm going to go to my circles framelits and I'm going to try and find one that is the right size. And of course the one that's the right size is missing. So I'm going to locate it around here and then cut that out. Okay, so to finish this off, I'm going to take a couple of dimensionals and put them on the back here because I want that little globe to pop off as well. And I'm going to line that up over there, pop that up, and then I'm just going to take a little piece of film strip and I'm going to use my tiny attacher to just staple it right here to the inside of the cardstock or the journal page. And then I'll come in with my scissor and just trim off that edge. So pretty simple. I think that's a pretty simple page. This is a mess. This one is more elaborate. This is very simple, a little more elaborate. So I definitely feel like I want to keep going on this, but I tend to keep going to the point where I don't even like what it looks like anymore. So I'm just going to leave this as it is. And the last thing I'm going to do is just come underneath this film strip with a glue dot. I just don't want that popping up. So I'm going to take just one glue dot and I'm going to go right underneath here and just adhere it there. And then that is going to be the page. So that is the next couple of pages in the art journal. If you have any questions for me, I'm Kathy at StampsAndScrapbooks.com.